All praise to the Most High, Yahuwah Elohim, by way of his only begotten Son, Yahushua Hamashiach, who this world knows as Jesus Christ. It's your boy Sam Noble. So a few times I've gotten the question, how did you get so serious, about the Bible and, coming to Christ? How did you come to Christ? How did you get to the point where you are now today? You know what I'm saying? And so it's been in my mind and my heart for a minute to do a testimonial video, just laying out my whole journey, how I came to Christ, what this walk has been like, you know what I'm saying, and what's brought me to the point of where I'm at now. And it's going to be pretty good for where I'm going with, some of my teachings and different things of that nature and the direction that I'm going in now. So you can see from the start, brought up right up until, this time today, you know what I'm saying? And then you can have a full understanding on where I come from and where I'm going in regards to this whole journey with Christ, because it's definitely been a journey. It's definitely been a growing process that has taken me through, my own personal volumes of truth, you know what I'm saying? So with that being said, we're going to start off. I'm going to start off to talk about my childhood. I'm going to talk a little bit about young adult phase, you know what I mean? And bring it on up to right now. You understand? So without further ado, let's get into it. All right. So as a lot of people might know, I grew up in church. Ever since I can remember being a young boy or whatnot, I was in church. My grandmother and my mother, they kept me and my sister, in the Lord's house. Mother and grandmother would say, we brought y'all back into the house of the Lord. My mom would oftentimes tell me and my sister that, she gave us back to God. She gave us back to the Lord, and that we ain't have no choice but to serve him. Say when we was kids, when we was babies, she would dedicate us to the Lord, you know what I mean? And, hence where my name comes from, Samuel, as well as I have a great grandfather whose name is Samuel as well. But my mom would often tell me how, like Hannah did in the Bible, the story of Hannah, how she dedicated Samuel and gave her child back to the Lord for his service, so like I said, ever since I can remember, we've been in church. Now, my experience being in church as a young boy started when I was a very young boy. My grandmother, around the time my grandfather had passed away, and my grandmother, she didn't want to stay in the house by herself, without her husband. She decided to come and move with me and my mother and my sister and my dad at the time. And so when she came to stay with us, they were talking, her and my mom, and they like, we want to make sure that, we gave these kids a foundation in the Lord and different things of that nature. And we want to, try to have somewhere that we can go to call home. We need to find us a church home. You know what I mean? So it was a point where we were staying off of, I want to say like 47th or something like that. And I could be wrong, but we eventually moved further on the south side, 79th and Ellis, Everline Park area. And so I went to Everline Park School, preschool, and I believe kindergarten. Also went to Everline Park Church, you know what I mean? So we had tried a church or two before we moved, back when we were staying on a what's considered the low end in Chicago. And so we went from there and we went further southeast, into the Line City area, Everline Park area. And we ended up going to a church called, the Everline Park United Church of Christ. So at this church, we spent a significant amount of years, you know what I mean? I can't put a full time frame on it. Obviously I was young, I was a child. But as far as my experience, going into the church and growing up in the church, it was pretty good. You know what I'm saying? I actually love church. You know what I mean? So the church that we went to, it was a lot of youth. You know what I'm saying? And they had a lot of different ways to try to engage with us. You know, and there, you know, I sang in a choir. Um, you know, they had a lot of different things they did with us. We did lock-ins. They had, you know, retreats. They took us on trips. My first time being on a boat was, you know, was with my church and things of that nature. You know, so I was very, you know, happy as a young boy growing up. Now, let's be honest, you know, I was kind of bad when I was young. You know what I'm saying? I was a little mannish, running around the church and stuff like that. You know, I was into, you know, the females and different things of that nature, you know, as a young boy. And you know, but I still enjoyed the environment, you know, and the church as far as the leadership and what was going on at that time. My mother, she she became the superintendent of Sunday school. My grandmother was a deacon. You know what I'm saying? Like I say, we sung in the choir, me and my sister. I was probably, you know, one of the best tenors that they had, you know, in the choir, or at least that's what they told me, because I can't sing a lick to today. But but yeah, so it was just a, you know, it was a beautiful experience. You know what I'm saying? And the people that was there that kind of helped cultivate that experience, pastors and everything. And some of the other families who, you know, who was there, who I grew up with and around, you know, they created a good experience for us to have. And it was something dope for us to be able to have a place to go to where we can, you know, grow. You know, you need those kind of things in the community. You know what I'm saying? Where kids can have an atmosphere to grow up in and have some things to do and to be involved in. You know what I'm saying? And so my experience as a child in church was a pretty good one. I was also into I always had a love for Christ. You know what I mean? I always knew that I loved Jesus, you know, which is what I understood him and knew him to be at that time. Um, I had always had a love for Christ in my heart. Now I wasn't, you know, I probably would go to sleep during the sermon and stuff like that, you know, but within Bible studies and Sunday school, and I listened a little more because that, you know, I didn't know at the time, but that was my niche, the studying part of it. And I was always an inquisitive kind of child. You know, I had a lot of questions. You know what I'm saying? I had a lot of questions back there. I used to ask a lot of questions. I used to, you know, try to figure things out. Um, but overall, I could say that, you know, it was a pretty good experience. And the people who, like I said, helped to cultivate that experience, you know, there are some people who I still love and appreciate to this day for, you know, the environment of what was created at the church that allowed us and allowed me to grow, you know, in the way that I did as a child. So now where I ran into my first hiccup in regards to the church or feeling anything that may have been uncomfortable or and even negative was there was a time period where, and I can't put a specific time on it or my age, to be honest with you, you know, but it was a time period where the church started to go through some things, you know what I mean? And there was essentially that led up to a split, you know what I mean? So me being a child, me trying to figure out and trying to understand what it was that was taking place, you know, as best as I could describe it, you know, from that time point was that there was a lot of adults that was kind of arguing and kind of going back and forth in regards to power. That's how I saw it. You know what I mean? How the church would be ran, what was going to be, you know, done, who would be in what positions and different things of that nature, you know. And so, you know, there was, like I said, a split where the church, you know, was like, okay, either you're on that side or you're on this side, you know, and it kind of centered around, like I say, the leadership and my pastors and we, you know, where we stood was with our pastors. I knew as a child was that we loved our pastors, the relationship and the bond that we had with them, in the way that they influenced and poured into our lives. It was like, this is where our love and our bond is. This is where our allegiance would lie. You know what I mean? You know, even as a child, I remember me and my sister talking. We just knew, you know, that's where we stood. You know what I'm saying? And so, for the same reasons, you know, I'm guessing, or for other reasons, whatever my mother's reasons were, she felt the same, you know, the same way. And so the church eventually took a split, and we went in a direction with the pastors who, you know, had helped to cultivate us, you know, throughout our whole journey there being at this church. Sidebar real quick, my pastor's wife, happened to be my wife's second grade teacher. You know what I'm saying? But we found that out later, obviously, you know, years later or whatnot. But I just thought that was interesting, you know. And she also played a significant part and role in our covenant and our marriage coming together. So, but maybe we'll get into that a little later. So it was a split, you know, and we went to there was another church that our pastors started, and you know, we went with them. My grandmother stayed at our original church for her own relationships and obligations. I told you that she was a deacon, you know, and so she had her reasons for feeling the need to stay and to fulfill certain obligations within the offices that she had took on, you know. And so that was it. So we went to this new church, and now, so I just want to stop right here and say that I'm not necessarily mentioning names or places. I did say Avalon Park because of where we moved to and where we was living. And for the sake of this testimony and for the sake of keeping it focused on the experience, my experience and my journey, I'm not necessarily trying to highlight people and you know, places and names. But you know, those of you who may view this, you know who you are. And but yeah, I want to keep it focused more so on the experience and the journey. So now, going to this new church, it was a beautiful thing, you know. So it was obviously smaller, you know, so it was more intimate. And then also at this church, you know, now we kind of we can kind of be, you know, operate and move things in a way that we would like to. You see what I'm saying? So what I mean is that our pastors at that time, they allowed us to kind of grow in our gifts and our talents. You see what I'm saying? As far as the expression of, you know, how we are, or the things that was in our heart, right? A lot of y'all know that I rap and everything like that. They would give me a platform to, you know, do my raps, you know, for Jesus and you know, all of that stuff. I would get practice to be, you know, performing and everything at church. You know, I was playing the drums. They would help me out to try to, you know, I was becoming a little older. They're like, okay, you know, they give you a little stipend, you know what I'm saying, for doing certain things in the church. And I was playing the drums and you know, helping the worship team and the choir and everything that we had going on at that time. I remember my pastor Bob, he bought me a set of bongos, and it came with a video thing, and I was, you know, all elated. So I had drums I was playing bongos and everything, you know, and they just really allowed us to be free in expression as far as, you know, what we were doing in the Lord, and to, you know, try to help us grow in our personal ways of serving God, you know. So the church was essentially centered around, you know, kind of teaching you and helping you to use your gifts and your talents for the glory of God, you know. And so that was also a good time for me, you know, and a good experience for me as a child, you know. And so I'm pretty grateful for, you know, for the people who were involved and for that time and that place of where I was and where my family was as far as this journey with Christ. And so obviously, and you know, and being in that type of environment, you know, I got to the point of, because I'm getting a little older, you know, to actually start thinking and considering about, who I was in God. Like I said, I was always inquisitive, had questions, but who, I wanted to be in the Lord, what type of person I wanted to be, or what God may have had for me, what he wanted for me. A lot of people, y'all know, you've been to, churches, that it's that time where they have, where you come down, and you can, you come down and you receive prayer. You can get prayer for something or different things, tell us to line up, and, they'll pray over you for the things that was going on. I remember a lot of those experiences, even at our old church, before we came to the new church, where there were certain things at those prayer lines or prayer circles that, I would get prayed over. And, there were certain things that was even spoken of me that, I've kept with me throughout my life. Certain things that was prophesied over me, and things that I was supposed to do, and places I was supposed to go, and, a lot of these types of things, So I was young, though, at the original church, and I just kind of took it with a grain of salt back then. As I'm starting to get older, I kind of think about those things a little bit, especially in the new environment with the church that we're in now. And so with that being said, we would have, there would be prayer time. And I remember hearing the lesson about how King Solomon, and how when he became king, he didn't ask the Lord for riches. He didn't ask for weapons. He didn't ask for, all type of stuff, possessions or anything of that nature. But he asked the Lord for wisdom, and the scriptures talk about how the Lord was so pleased about that, right? And so I took that, and that stuck with me. So when it comes to these prayer lines and, come down and receive prayer, and I would always go down, and ever since I heard that, I will go down and I would ask for wisdom. What do you need prayer for? People need prayer for different things, health, wealth, sickness, whatever, those things may be. I would always ask for wisdom, and I'm mentioning that because I believe that was pleasing to the Lord. And I think that God has answered my question, but I didn't know how that question of that prayer would be answered. And I didn't know the journey that it would take me through. You understand? And but it was something that was very significant in my life. So, but to sum up our time, with that church or whatnot, it was a very good time, and we were all pretty much, it was like a family, and but all things do come to an end, so it was like they had an arrangement. So the church that we was in, it wasn't the building, it wasn't actually, our building. It was like they had an arrangement with the church that it was really like a 7-day Adventist church. And so, they arranged to where we use it on Sunday. They, had their services on Saturday, this, that, and the other. And eventually, whatever that arrangement was, whatever the situation was that was set up, that thing came to an end. And so the church, we was no longer able to, facilitate our services there. And, our pastors and everything, they tried to, try to direct us into, certain churches that we could go to, possibly visit, this, that, and the other, and also keep within the circles of, the relationships that we had, already with, the people who was in the church, so that we could kind of all stay connected to a degree, and go to, some sister churches that we would affiliate with here and there, you know what I'm saying? But as far as that era for that church, that time had come to an end. All right, so at this point, we don't have a church home. My mother, my sister, and I, we would visit different churches, but none of them was like places where we felt that we wanted to, to make a home for us. So we was kind of trying different things. We would have Bible studies. Sometimes, like I told you, because my grandmother, she stayed at the original church, she would invite us to certain things there. And so we did some visiting at churches or whatnot, but we wasn't, you know, we didn't have a church home anymore at this point in time. So now I could say at this point I'm about 17 years old. I'm also kind of getting involved in other things that's going on. That's a testimony maybe for another time. This is more so focused on my journey and relationship with Christ. But at this time I'm running the streets. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting involved in different stuff that, you know, that the world was trying to offer me and all of that, right? And so I'll tell you a story, that kind of also led into me, continuing in my journey. So I'm 17 years old and I'm smoking a lot of weed. That was me and my cousins or whatnot. You go back and forth your cousin's houses, they spend the night, you spend the night, this, that, and the other. So I had a cousin who stayed in the suburbs, and we would go out there and we smoked a lot of weed, girls, different stuff like that. So, but it was one night, and I tell this story because it's significant, because it was at that point that a lot of things changed, But it was one night that I'm over there. It's probably like, I want to say like 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that, I think my cousin, he had went upstairs, he went to sleep. I'm downstairs in the basement where my older cousin usually is, but he wasn't home or, wherever he was at. But, so I'm downstairs in the basement and I'm smoking, getting high, you know what I'm saying? On the computer, looking around and stuff like that. So, but my older cousin, he had, like books and stuff that was down there. So I'm just, pulling stuff out. I'm looking at stuff. And I came across this one book, and it said Mankind's Search for God. And then so I turned it around, I'm looking, just reading the cover of it, looking on the back, and then asked these questions, and it was like, who are we? Where are we from? What are we here for? Where are we going? And what is our purpose? And so mind you, I was high, so I really tweaked. I tweaked out. I kind of had a panic attack. You know what I'm saying? Because I remember my heart racing and I had to sit down and stuff, and I kind of like had a tweaking moment. And because, I had kind of like realized that although I had came up in church, although I had, this foundation, you know what I'm saying? And knowing Christ, and yeah, I believed in Christ and I love Christ and everything. I couldn't say that, that I felt like I had the answer to those questions. I felt, like kind of lost at that moment. You know what I mean? Not necessarily saying that those answers wasn't given, but just at that point in time, I began to really look around and consider. I was looking at the staircase. I'm looking at the bookshelf. I'm looking at all of this different stuff, and I'm like, what is this? I looked at myself in the mirror, and I'm like, what am I? Like, what is even a human being? You know what I'm saying? So I was tweaking a little, but it was a lot in there that kind of started me on a certain type of journey, because I realized I'm like, what for real? What is this all really for? You know what I'm saying? What is this really about? You know what I mean? What is we here for? You know what I'm saying? And so at that point, I realized that me, independently, as a man, 17 years old, about to go into, adulthood and whatnot, I need to know and I need to come to a conclusion in regards to these things for myself. I appreciate everything that everybody has done for me and things that people have given to me, and the knowledge and understanding that, I grew up with, but I need to seek and search out as a man for myself and determine what's true and what's right and what this is all about. So, a lot of times people say like, well, you just kind of follow that or believe that because that was what you was raised with. That was how you came up. So that's what you know what I'm saying? That's what you're going to believe in, but it wasn't really that for me. Because by the time I got to the point of age and really kind of thinking for myself, I essentially went down a path. And so we get into that path now. So the path that I started to go in, I started to say, okay, I need to know and understand what's going on. I started to look into everything. You know what I'm saying? I started looking into science and evolution. You know what I mean? Trying to figure out, though, what it is that they're saying we come from. How did this stuff get started? Comparing that with creationism. You understand what I'm saying? Because I still believe in God, but I need to know, maybe I believe this, and it ain't true. So I'm comparing and contrasting, what's being said in the scientific realm, and trying to see what makes more sense. Essentially, I came to the point where, I felt that it took more faith to believe in a lot of the stuff that they were saying in the science community. You know what I mean? To accept that these things came about by chance. You understand? It wouldn't register with me. So I moved from there, and I'm like, okay, I believe in God, but how do I know what the truth is about God? How do I know if what I believe or what I've been told and different things of that nature is true? So now I'm searching. I guess I went on the name of the book was Mankind's Search for God. So now I'm going on my search for God. So at this point, I started reading the Quran. I started reading of Saitama Buddha. I started to look into ancient African indigenous religions. I started to read the Hindu scripts, the Sanskrit. I got so much into one of the Hindu texts that I was pretty much professing it to be, my faith, and that was the Bhagavad Gita. And, and any people who know about the Hare Krishna movement, or you've seen some of those people, the Swamis and different things, that was what I was into. You know what I'm saying? And I got into a lot of that stuff, and, I'm digging and I'm searching, I'm looking, and I started to kind of land in that area. So I said, I'm going to look into as much as possible. I need to know who got this right. What's the true and what's the real understanding? You know what I'm saying? And so in doing that, I came across a lot of information, even in regard to the faith that I was brought up in. You see what I'm saying? And I started to go back to my family with that information. I went to my wife now, who wasn't my wife at the time. She was my friend, but I used to go to her and tell her stuff that I was learning from church and different things of that nature. I would give her books and, all of that, and, be trying to teach her about Jesus. So now I'm going to her and I'm kind of trying to undo all of that stuff that I told her. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling her like, yeah, but look into this. What about this? This ain't right, or that ain't right. And I'm doing the same thing with my family. I go to my family, go to my mother, my sister, my grandma, and I'm like, hey, listen, man, all that stuff y'all believe in about Jesus is wrong. All that stuff y'all believe in is false. The Bible was built based off of astrology. Jesus was stolen from all of these other different gods and deities, sun gods and stuff that was, that came before him. You know what I'm saying? And y'all just really following this stuff because, it was passed down to you, and because you have an emotional attachment to it. And I told them like, but for me, as a man, I needed something more. And so I essentially really kind of denounced my faith in Christ. You know what I'm saying? And I was telling, it was a ordeal. My family, they was crying for me, and oh, my son, my brother, my grandson, he lost, and I was crying for them. And I'm like, oh, y'all just believe in anything. You're just following it just because you got an emotional attachment, or because it was passed down to you. I remember them combating, and trying to go into war, in regards to these things. My grandmama coming out with the big Bible, and she was like, listen, this is what the word of God say, and how you know that's the word of God? How you know what I'm saying? So I'm going back and forth, so my mom is like, it was kind of like three areas of, testimony to a degree, because my mom, now she's coming, she's like, boy, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Jesus, and, these experiences and this, that, and the other. It was Christ who did this and did that and woo, woo, woo. You know what I'm saying? My sister, she's kind of on the spiritual warfare side of things, and she's like, yo, he didn't, you know, some spirits that got hold to him, and, you know, she wants to, you know, deliver me. You know what I'm saying? And it needs to be some deliverance done or something. You know, so it was an ordeal, and I just told him like, yeah, I'm like, well, y'all just do what y'all do. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna do what I do, and that's just gonna be it. But I can't accept this stuff. You know what I'm saying? This from what I'm looking at, from the things that I'm looking into, this isn't right. And so, like I said, and I was into the Bhagavad Gita. I'm into getting into the Hindu text and stuff like that. And so, you know, those things, all of the stuff I was reading, not just that, but all of the stuff that I was getting into, it was very mentally stimulating. You know what I'm saying? I felt like I was at a point of like, you know, where philosophically it was on another level. You know what I'm saying? And so I can say it was a lot of head knowledge, and it made me feel as though I knew something, like I had, you know, understanding that other people don't have. And that's kind of one of the things that Satan does to kind of bring people in. It's like the esoteric knowledge. It's the hidden. It's the things that people don't know or understand that, you know, kind of draws you in and gives you that sense of pride. You know what I'm saying? That sense of making one wise, right? I was eating from the tree of the knowledge, right? Eating from all of that knowledge, the knowledge of good and evil. And I felt like, you know, my eyes was open. You know what I'm saying? And so a lot of the stuff, and that's the reason why I kind of deal with some of these things, you know, at this point and to this day, because a lot of the stuff that's being taught within like the New Age, the occult, and you know, woke movements and different things of that nature, I went and dealt with these things at 17 years old. You know what I'm saying? I kind of got into all of those things, you know, very heavily at a young age. And so I know the effects of them, you know, I know the ins and outs of it, and I know, you know, the doctrines of devils, you know, and how they can take you off from the truth and the simplicity and the liberty in Christ, right? So at this point, I'm you know, I've essentially kind of denounced my faith, and I'm standing in this stuff that's, you know, mentally stimulating. And it got me feeling real philosophical and very knowledgeable, right? And so I said to myself, you know what? In all fairness, if I be real with myself, I never really gave the Bible the same fair shake. You see what I'm saying? I didn't give it the chance that I gave a lot of this other stuff. And the reason why was because I felt like I knew the Bible already. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in church. I grew up, you know, I know all of the stories. You know what I'm saying? I've been in plenty of Sunday schools and Bible studies and all of this stuff. And so I felt like I already know the Bible. You know what I mean? So the way that I went into these other things on a quest for understanding and knowledge, with unbiasedness, just complete openness to receive whatever it may be. You know what I'm saying? Not judging it. You know what I'm saying? But just coming at things humbly and coming at it from just the perspective of, I want to know what the truth is. You know what I'm saying? I never did that with the scriptures, you know, and I had to say to myself, you know what? Maybe I'm going to go back in and I'm going to deal with the Bible in a way that I dealt with all of this other stuff. I'm going to give it another chance. I'm going to look into this, but I'm going to do it the same way that I did these things. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to come in, you know, like I know what I think I know and that I got things understood. And, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to come at it fresh, like I came, you know, the angle that I came at all of this other stuff with. And when I decided to do that, you know, I'm pretty sure that the enemy was mad, man, because, you know, obviously you see where I am today.